It's such an important part of our lives, this battle that we're all fighting. We're Parents' Rights in Education, as Lori indicated. We've got a little promo video that we're going to play for you right now so that you can kind of see who we are. So. Okay, so Parents' Rights in Education.
Get to the microphone.
Who are we? Basically, we are a grassroots organization consisting of parents, grandparents, educators, school board members, and concerned citizens, essentially, concerned about education here in the state of Oregon. We actually were founded in 2011, as you can see, and our mission is to protect and to advocate for parents' rights to guide the education of their children. There it is, the Seaside Adolescent Sexuality Conference, okay? For over 2 decades, they had been holding this conference, and it had integrated into a no-holds-barred sexual education free-for-all, as many of you probably are aware by now. And after 4 years of effort of going to the conference, gathering materials and evidence, we were able to present a case to Coin6 News to actually show this evidence to the general public, and we actually forced the state into closing this conference, which was a wonderful thing. So there it goes. It's gone, hopefully forever.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So thank you. Now the thing is that the agenda is still there, okay? And we're finding that the agenda now is sort of being focused on school-based health centers. So this is what we're going to talk about today. It's a very important part of this whole puzzle, and it's something that you should be very well aware of, and most parents don't have a clue about these health centers in the schools. So basically that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to give the mic up to Chris here, and she'll tell you a little bit about it.
Is anybody here familiar with school-based health centers? One in your area? Good. Actually, a school-based health center is a business operating in your school with an unprecedented access to your children, and it's really a captive audience for these school-based health centers. Did you get the wolf in there?
There he comes.
There he is. So there,
Yeah.
That is really what it is, or a Trojan horse too is another one, but I like this better. There's that wolf, and they truly are operating virtually in secret with no accountability to parents, no accountability to the school board. They only report on themselves to Salem, to the program office there, and they're essentially the judge and jury for themselves, and parents are left out.
Okay, so basically a little bit of history. The school-based health centers were started here in Oregon over 25 years ago, and at a cost of millions of dollars, of course, of our tax money. Basically, their mantra is "Healthy kids learn better." Now, that's really a great mantra, because who's going to have a difficulty with that, from them saying that? One of the things that Oregon did early on, they started this program in the state, and then they sort of moved it to the federal level. They were instrumental in starting and being affiliated with a national school-based alliance nationally. So then all the other states are happy to jump on. Basically what they do is they wave out some money in front of the school districts, of course, and say, we can do this, and what a great thing, because we want to be able to provide your children with a healthy environment, and there was reasons that they wanted to do this in the schools. This is Tammy Alexander, Interim Executive Director of the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance, which is the actual entity in the state that basically is controlling the school-based health centers. I've got a little audio from a webinar that she put on. I just want you to listen to this.
You cannot educate a child who is not healthy, and you cannot keep a child healthy who is not educated.
Okay. Anybody confused? Let's read this. Let's read what she says. You cannot educate a child who is not healthy. Is that true? No. Absolutely not. The second part. And you cannot keep a child healthy who is not educated. And we're supposed to take that on face value? So basically what they do is they come across with these little statements like this, and we're supposed to accept it lock, stock, and barrel and think it's the gospel truth. But we know for sure that it isn't. Put that there. Okay, so Chris is going to talk about school-based health centers and how they are founded and grounded in deceit. And this is really important for you to know.
Okay, I see a couple of our co-warriors who battled with us. Coral and Jean are in the audience. Wait, thank you very much. We battled, it was in 2013. And the school-based health center advocates came into our community almost a year before we even knew they were there. And they went around to different agencies and got letters of support about healthy kids. They sold their school-based health center as general health care for students. And through omission, they were very deceitful. But first, even before that, they went to our local school board in Astoria High School and wanted to fast track the school-based health center and say, hey, get this done right away, even before they had to go out into the community. They had a $60,000 planning grant to do this. And anyway, then the superintendent got wind of this, and he decided, no, I think the community better be a part of this conversation. So we eventually had 3 community meetings, and they made us a lot of promises. For one thing, they said, well, gee, you don't want contraceptive care in the schools? Well, we won't have to have that. Well, that was untrue, because in the standards for certification for school-based health centers, in order to get their money, they must offer that. Even if it's not done in the school itself, which they prefer, it's referred out for contraception, abortion, sterilization. So that was part of their deceit. And so they finally said, okay, then we just won't offer the contraceptives in your school. Well, then when it came to the report that they gave to the school board, their advisory committee report, that was one of their top 6 priorities. So they had blatantly lied to us about that. More deceit. They established a YAC, Y-A-C, that's the Youth Advisory Council in the school, and the Youth Advisory Council reported also, they gave a written report to the school board about how wonderful it would be and how safe they would feel with the school-based health center, and they also presented at one of the meetings, you'll recall this, Coral and Jean, and we were not allowed to question them because it might intimidate them. So you couldn't question, nor could other students join the YAC unless they were supportive of the school-based health center. So it's either my way or no way. And then another important thing that we asked them, would Planned Parenthood be a part of the school-based health centers? And they actually said, absolutely not. Well, a little more deceit, because it turns out that the Youth Advisory Council actually thanked the Planned Parenthood for their great training in school-based health centers. So I honestly, do they think we're never going to find out that they lied about this? Well, we were very pleased to defeat this school-based health center on a vote of 3-2 at the school board meeting. So it turned out good, but it was an awful battle and truly was founded and grounded in deceit.
We have some more audio from Tammy Alexander, the interim executive director again. And these are some statistics that she was putting forth as far as the success of school-based health centers. So give a listen.
2 additional little statistics from recent studies. One study talked about high school school-based health center users. They had a 50% decrease in absenteeism and 25% decrease in tardiness 2 months after receiving school-based health, mental health and counseling services. And then in a 2000 study found that school-based health centers users for mental health purposes increased their grade point averages over time compared to the non-users of school-based mental health services.
Okay, it sounds like pretty nice data, doesn't it? Pretty positive. Let's take a look at what the actual data is. Okay, so she claims 50% reduction in absenteeism and 25% reduction in tardiness after only 2 months after the HBSC, the School-Based Health Center, was instituted. That was really old data from the year 2000, and if you notice, it was not Oregon data. It has nothing to do with success here in Oregon. It was from another state. I think it was possibly Texas. And when we looked at that data, we tried to find the actual data that she was talking about. It didn't make a lot of sense to us at all. So they're using data that's not even pertaining to us here in Oregon. The second part of that was school-based health center users increased their grade point average over time compared to non-users. Well, that was from the year 2000, a study from the year 2000. I think it was from maybe New York. Again, not Oregon data, okay? And then, so Chris was interested in this data, and she actually emailed Tammy about the data, and she'll tell you a little bit about the response there.
After listening to this webinar, I thought, well, I'm going to email and just see where did you get that data and how old is it, and do you have anything specific to Oregon? And I didn't think they'd answer, but you know, they don't get it. They don't know that maybe somebody's on to them, and they think whatever they say is going to be accepted as the truth. Well, you would think that Oregon School-Based Health Alliance would be about Oregon data, wouldn't you? That's what they wanted their audience to believe. You could tell that. So I emailed and asked, do you have anything specific to Oregon? Because I'm going to make a presentation on school-based health centers. And she said, no, we have no data from Oregon. And remember that school-based health centers have been in Oregon for over 20 years. No data for Oregon. Either they have data and it doesn't look too good, or they simply haven't any data that shows what she's trying to make people believe it shows. So she sent me this, and there it is.
The evidence. Okay, we're going to talk about school-based health center liability issues. And this is really important because the school-based health centers in this state, and probably in most states as a matter of fact, are really their own judge and jury, as Chris indicated earlier. There really is no liability for the people who actually work in the clinics themselves. In 2013, the Senate Bill 491 was passed, and it exempts school-based health center employees when they're acting in good faith from any civil liability. So now, school-based health centers, you got to remember, they can do diagnostic work, they can do treatment, they can do all sorts of things, but they're not held liable to anyone, except maybe the state, you know. So everybody else that has a business, or, you know, if you're a physician or a lawyer, even McDonald's is held liable for the food that they produce. But these people who have our children as their basic, people that they're treating or seeing are held completely exempt from any civil liability. So let's talk about some of these things. Surgical and sterilization procedures, they can actually refer these out. They don't do them at the school-based health center yet, but they can refer them out with no parental notification required, okay? There again, parents are sidelined when it comes to the health of their children through the schools. Medication. They can actually write prescriptions for prescription drugs through the health centers. They don't fill them there, of course, there's no pharmacy there, but they can actually write the prescriptions right on site without parental notification. And of course, we know that that's what they can do with contraception and all sorts of other types of medications. This is a big one here, counseling and mental health, okay? It sounds like this is great. You know, we all think about school counselors and how wonderful they are as far as helping us determine what we're going to do as far as our education. but they're getting into mental health counseling in the schools, okay? And this is not referred out particularly. This is something they can do within the schools at this point in time. There again, parental notification not required. Now, one of the things that is a big problem here is the fact that, as you well know, there's a huge agenda focused on gender fluidity, okay? The Adolescent Sexuality Conference the last few years was really focusing almost more on that than it was on good sexual education and health. So there is an agenda out there, and the fact is that parents are not required to okay counseling for their children at all in this situation. The other part of this is that I'm not sure if this bill is passed yet or not, but there is a bill that requires parents not to be able to have their children counseled by a reparative therapist if they're looking to seek some sort of a different gender, and their parents say, well, let's go talk to a counselor about, maybe it's just a phase you're going through or whatever, let's go to a counselor. If the counselor would be counseling against gender fluidity, it's against the law in Oregon. It will be against the law in Oregon. California has already passed that law. Absolutely. California, I think, is one of the first states that passed it, but Oregon is shortly going to be looking at that as well. So there again, parents are sidelined, pretty much out of the equation there. The contraception abortion situation, this, of course, to us with Oregon Right to Life here is a huge situation. Basically, you probably all know this, but I'll say it again, a child of any age can receive reproductive care and reproductive services through the state of Oregon. And this is through the school-based health centers as well, without parental notification. So there again, it's one of those things that we need to stand up for. We need to start focusing on educating parents to their actual rights in these areas. Liability issues continued, and this is all about immunizations. You may have heard about this in the news where I think this girl was immunized against her parents' wishes, and there was a big to-do about it at the state level and so forth. But immunizations are, they have to have certain immunizations before they allow them to attend public school. We all know this. I think there's 15 different immunizations they're looking at particularly, but one of the things that the state is sort of looking at in the future, it's not here yet, but we have evidence of this, is that they would like to decrease the age of consent for immunizations through school-based health centers to 11 years of age. 11 years of age for their own consent, without parental notification, without parental consent.
And that would include the HPV?
And that includes the HPV virus vaccine as well. So, this is the direction that the state wants to go. And we've seen this chipping away at parents' rights over time, and it's a continual battle, but we've got to stand up for it. So we're going to talk a little bit about accountability. I'm going to let Chris talk about this video, and she'll explain a little bit about it here.
This is the superintendent of St. Helens Schools in Columbia County that you see here. And what you will soon hear and witness is a parent talking about a health conference or a health fair, I believe it was, that they had last spring or so in St. Helens. And it was through the THAT, and that's Teen Health Advocacy Team. And they partnered with the Transactive Agency in Portland with Jen Burleton, who is now a woman, was a man, or vice versa. I don't know what she is today. But anyway, she heads this Transactive Agency. They provide puberty blockers, binders, puberty, what's the other one? Anyway, they block the puberty, strong hormonal treatment for children without parental knowledge or consent. And they came in to do this health fair at St. Helens through the school-based health centers. They weren't accountable to the superintendent, and you will see this admission here with the parent.
They also had on their website the THAT Club. Is anyone familiar with that club? Your teen health advocacy team. They also on the same page as now gone had a health fair in high school last school year. And at that health fair, it said on the page that they gave sex surveys to the kids, had tables about safer sex options. They also had a representative from the Transactive Center, which is the Transactive Gender Center. And the Transactive Gender Center has resources for youth, okay, this is minors, that has voice coaching for ages 4 to 17. It's for someone who wants to transition from male to female. They give resources for youth so that they can enforce their rights at school. And they also have resources on taking care of your body and a medical transition option. So if you, as a young person, want to transition from basically stop your hormones and stop puberty, they'll help you do that. Did you know that the Transactive Center came to your high school? I guess you guys are superintendent. Okay. and I understand that, and that is, I believe, by design. How did they find the Transactive people to bring them in? From the 2013 Adolescent Sexuality Conference, was a keynote speaker the previous year.
So you're starting to see the connection there? Absolutely. Okay, so accountability continued here. Okay, so school-based health centers, allow unprecedented access to our children. Basically they've got them for the most part of their lives as they're growing up, of their waking hours anyway. And so that's something that we need to have some sort of parental involvement or parental guidance in many of these areas, and at this point we don't. Okay, school boards have no oversight over the school-based health centers. And this is something we alluded to, and they just alluded to that in that video. The superintendent was completely unaware of what was going on in his own school. That they had this health fair in his own school. He had no clue what was going on. And that was basically instigated through the school-based health center program. No parental involvement, of course, we talked about that. And this is the thing, is that, we as parents, we have to have this, because otherwise, it's hard enough to raise a child when you have control of your child, but when you don't have any input, it's a nightmare, absolutely a nightmare. Okay, now, however, there's some good news, okay? And the good news is that law supremacy exists. Now, what is law supremacy? Basically, that's the concept that federal law basically trumps state law in many areas, in most areas, and state law in most areas trumps regulations like Oregon ORSs, Oregon OARs and administrative rules and so forth. So, and the thing is most parents don't know this. And so it's our job as parents' rights to educate the parents to the fact that they have the legal authority to be the first authority over their children's education. And that's basically what our mission is, as we said earlier. Anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to let you know that in your hands, I think you have, I hope you all have, the state laws and the federal laws that give parents the power to say, no, I don't want my child participating even in the school-based health center or sex ed classes. I don't want him going to the adolescent sexuality conference. Of course, that is not happening now, but I suspect they'll try to resurrect it. You have the legal right to do that, and I know my daughter has been opting her children out of some of these things, and they really didn't give her any resistance. Sometimes they do push back a little and say, no, that'll be our decision. Don't let them do that. Don't let them intimidate you. You have that right. Insist on it. You can give a written opt-out form to them, and they have to accept it. That is the law. The law is on your side.
Okay, so we have some conclusions about school-based health centers, parents' rights and education. We've come to some conclusions about the program, and they are as follows. Okay. School-based health centers are stripping parents of their legal rights. And it's just because of the fact that they know they can get away with it, because most parents are clueless about these things. You know, they're so busy, and it's really hard enough to make ends meet and try to raise the child in this busy world. But we need to make sure that they are educated in these areas. They have become a venue for adult cultural agendas. The funny thing is that the Adolescent Sexuality Conference was a venue for adult cultural agendas. So you can see the similarity right there. So it's really sad when we have to deal with this type of a battle, when grown-ups are foisting this type of thing on our children. So, that's something we have to be really aware of. School-based health centers have become a wedge between parents and their children, and between communities and their schools. Okay, so you can see the evidence we presented about how they step in between the parent and the child by not allowing the parent to have any say or any knowledge of what's going on in the school-based health center, essentially. It's basically behind closed doors, whatever goes on is whatever goes on, and we can't hardly find out about it. And I believe as far as I know, is they fall back on HIPAA laws because it's kind of a health thing, and so they fall back on that as being able to protect the students' confidentiality as far as whatever their health concerns are. Don't you think it's kind of strange that as parents and grandparents that we have no clue what's being done health-wise to children at a public school? It just seems like to me that's the farthest thing I could ever imagine in my life, but that's the reality of it. So there's a document called Minors' Rights, basically, and it tells the kids about what their rights are as minors, and it tells them basically that they can pretty much circumvent a lot of this parental authority and a lot of this parental consent, which is kind of sad because they're sort of stepping in between the parent and the child, and which I find just abominable. It doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do to me at all. So we're going to have a slide here about taking action, what Parents' Rights in Education is doing to take action against the school-based health center deal. So local control is huge, okay? You want to go ahead and talk about that, Chris? I think so.
Oh, you think so? Okay, I will be happy to do that. Local control is nothing without parent control. Local control comes from your school boards. They also have the legal responsibility and duty to know and actually be responsible for what happens in the curriculum in their schools, and not let school-based health centers hide within the education system without any accountability. School boards, you must insist on that local control. And we also want to educate our legislators, school boards, and parents. We have been in contact with some of our Salem legislators. They've been wonderful. We have given them a suggested law for parental rights to look at. I'm afraid I have my doubts that it's going to go very far in this legislature, but nevertheless, the conversation will start in the Salem legislature. And we are monitoring those laws, not laws, but bills that are currently in the legislature, which are providing millions, up to $15 million more money for at least 11 more school-based health centers, and to support more heavily with your tax dollars, those that are already currently implemented in schools. And also, are we ready for that? Yeah, we are. We are working with the Oregon School Board Association to work with the district policies. There's already quite a few policies in place. A lot of school boards don't refer very frequently to their policies anyway. I recall that from having been on a school board. You don't look at those too often, but really you need to insist that they take a look at those. One of them that I know many schools have is a studying controversial issues policy. And we want to maybe tweak that one so that it would insist on parents being informed of any survey or event or curriculum that the students are coming up to, and give them complete and accurate information along with an opt-out form so they can say, no, my child's not participating there. And not just that, gee, we're going to have a health class next week. Well, that sounds pretty benign, but to give information about what that class really will encompass. For example, some of the curriculum now, much of it, includes things such as instruction in anal sex, oral sex, masturbation, touching each other's genitals. That was included in the curriculum called Making a Difference, I think, that Scappoose schools adopted, and my daughter simply opted her child out of that. So that must be told to parents completely and accurately, and not just a general comment about a health class. And also, they need to be able to opt out of events, and also if a third party comes into the classroom, like Planned Parenthood, who is non-certified and unqualified to teach, notify the parents if it is a controversial issue, and certainly much of what Planned Parenthood might do would be that they're coming in and their child does not have to participate. That kind of transparency has to happen, and that's what you have the legal right to do. I think that's it.
Okay, now we're going to address what you as parents and grandparents can do. So, empowered parents take action. And this is where we're going to make a difference. Okay, this is the only way we're going to make a difference, is if we stand up and enforce our legal rights in these areas. So first of all, you need to know that federal and state laws guarantee you your parental authority for your child's education. And we, like that list of laws that we gave you, be sure and read through those, because it's wonderful knowledge to have that. And you can count on it. You know, basically, you need to be able to exercise that right that you have. Okay, so you need to become the eyes and ears of your local school board. This is kind of quite a challenge, but it's going to take some work for you to be able to do this, but it's essential that you actually take an active role in this area by attending school board meetings, first of all, or also by becoming a school board member so that you're a part of the decision process. Okay, without this, basically the state is going to they're going to get their agenda with nobody standing up against it if we don't get active in these areas. So that's one way to make a difference. Also, visit your school-based health center if there's one in your school, or if not, then visit one in your particular county. And they have to allow you into the school-based health center to take a look at it, to ask questions, to find out what's going on there. By law, they have to allow access to that from parents. So that's one way to get the information that you need. If your school has a school-based health center, get answers to Parents' Rights in Education's list of questions, which we have given a handout for you for that as well. So we'd like you to be able to, you have questions you can ask that you should insist on getting answers to from that particular school-based health center. Some of those they may not be able to answer. I can tell you right off. So, and if your school is considering, doesn't have one, but is considering putting a school-based health center in, require transparency and full disclosure. As Chris said, you've got to ask the right questions, and you've got to demand that they give you not just answers, but all the answers to your questions. And if not, then insist that they find out those answers and get back to you, but try to get them to do it on the spot. Or if they say, well, we'll look into it, say, okay, I'll be back tomorrow at this time. Can you have the answer by then? In other words, put a time frame on it so that you force them to give you the right information. Insist that no school services that are provided through a school-based health center circumvent parental authority. Now, is that happening already? Yeah, in almost every instance. Okay, so this is something we need to change, but we can still insist, that we need to be involved as parents, and we need to be consented, and we need to stand up for our rights. So, and if it involves changing the laws down in Salem, we need to do that, absolutely. Also, try to utilize like pregnancy resource centers, faith-based, or family-based counseling services rather than maybe services in a school-based health center where you don't know what's going on with your child, okay? So there's plenty of services in the community that do exactly what they say they're going to do for your child that you have control over. You know, your pediatrician or your family counselor or your pastor or whatever. So utilize those as much as possible. And that's one way to keep control, you know, as a parent. And now we're open for questions and answers. So
He wants to know whether, or what the response would be from us when the school says that they are just protecting those children who may be abused at home. You know, if there should be an opportunity to protect the child if they've been emancipated from, and that's a legal term, I believe, and the school's going to know that. The school's also going to know what children are severely at risk, and I don't think the whole system should be dumbed down because there are some certainly who are at risk, and then hide the treatment of all the children. Do you have something to say about that?
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Oh.
I was just going to say, parents are not guilty until proven innocent.
true, very true.
I guess that really does cover it. Thank you, Lori. Okay. Oh, you mean the liability, that they're exempt from liability? Yes. Is that easy to do? I'm sure it isn't to repeal the law. I think they declared an emergency for that, which means then you can't refer it for change. But with the legislature we have right now, which is certainly leaning toward this kind of empowering of students, it's very difficult to change that. I think the first line of attack is probably through the OSBA, Oregon School Board Association, with changing the policy, because you know they have to dance with who brung them, and they're working for the school boards, even though some of them maybe lean toward what the legislators lean toward. But I think first through school policy and local control. If you go to your school board and say, hey, what about this policy that you've got that says you have to inform parents, then they've got to do it. That would be, I think, the easier route to take at first. We would love to change the laws for this liability. That's a more difficult path.
I just want to say something to that, however. It is really powerful to educate the school boards and the superintendents with your rights and such. So some of them do know. Some of them are just victims in a sense because of they kind of bow down to what the Oregon Department of Education says. So we want to create distance between the Oregon Department of Education and these local districts. So yes, some of them might know, but just educate them, and then they're accountable then.
I might add that superintendent has found another job at this point. But I don't know. It's true. No, that has actually happened. Her question was if there's an emergency or perhaps allergic reaction or something like this because of the treatment from a school-based health center provider, who is liable? Is that what you're... Yeah. You know, we asked that question when we were battling the school-based health center, and they never did answer us. Sometimes they would say, well, go look at our website. Or, you know, they couldn't answer that. We don't know who's liable. Is it the parent? Is it the school board? We want the school boards to feel a little fearful that they may be liable because the school-based health center providers are not. So who would it be? The parents won't know, and suddenly are they liable? And worse than that, if their child gets severely sick or even dies, who's responsible for that horrific thing happening? We don't know. Do you have a school-based? She's talking about can be, and she says that 200 parents came up against, was it the disbursement of the contraception at the school-based health center? And did they stop that disbursement? They did. And she's saying, they asked, well, who's liable for anything that happens with this disbursement or treatment? And the finger was pointed at the school board. They need to know this because that kind of liability would surely scare them. They can be sued. That's one of the responsibilities, and they can sue or be sued. So, and I think you have that law in front of you too for the school board responsibility and duty. So give them that scare. They need it. Oh, thank you so much. I guess we've got this signal, so we have to go. Thank you so much for the great questions and for being a good audience. And please take that power you have with the law and use it. We can win this and safeguard our kids.